front and the left side, and I'm giving you another one here, a top and a front. So you're going to be making these two objects, and this is a little, little preview of what you're going to be making on here. Now, it's not difficult, and the thing is that if you recall what Brody's question was a week ago when we did this other assignment, Brody said, hey, do we have to have a grid to do this whole thing on, or can we do it just merely by dimensions? And the answer to that question is yes, we can do it by dimensions, and that's what you're going to be doing today. So let me demonstrate what you're going to have to do for our assignments today. You're given these two guys right here. Now the last page on here shows you the orientation I want them on, which is why you're seeing them the way they are right now. They may not be entirely to scale. These guys are to scale. These drawings over here may not be to scale. So the round cylindrical one to the left, and then this other guy oriented the way you see it there to the right. Everybody cool about that? So the only nuances to tell you about on here is just to remind you, first of all, how to set your isometric grid, an isometric on here. So remember under drafting settings, back here under snap and grid, what you need to do is down here, change it from snap type down to isometric snap. And that's what changes. If I put it back to rectangular snap and click OK, you see I've got that rectangular cursor on there. But if I change it to isometric, then I'm able to do what it is I want to do in here, that's make isometric drawings. So change that to isometric. Now regarding the snap spacing and the grid spacing, those are incidental. I just have them set on here. You don't have to set them, and they don't really have a bearing on your drawing on here. So that's why we're not even changing it to 2D model space to make it grid. You don't need the grid anymore. So what we're going to do is just continue on this way. Now the only things to mention to you about this are, you can put all the geometry on the object layer, just like you're shown. And you don't dimension it, and you don't put any center lines onto it. So I've got center lines on here for my demo purposes. This is a demo drawing, but yours will not have that when you are done. So let's talk about what it is you need to do. All right, now let's talk about this first one on here. Notice that this thing is cylindrical. It's 48. It's a 48 diameter. So what you do in this case, remember hitting F5 will change the orientation of that guy. Wherever you pick, remember you're doing an iso circle. So go to the ellipse command, EL, and then where'd you go?
Why is your bar so big, Doug?
I don't know. Is that crazy? Huh. This is bizarre. It's not even showing me the text on there either. See if I can get iso circle out of it. Yeah, there I can. All right. So I can get it. I don't know why mine's that way. I moved my screen down to fit on your screen, but there it is. Now you can at this point. You can actually give it information. So it wants to know if I'm following along here. I'm going to make sure that I'm following along the tracking right there, making sure I'm tracking or using ortho in this case. And if I see this thing has a diameter of 48, it means it has a radius of 24. So I can actually type that in. I can type in 24, and it'll actually give me the size I'm looking for. So as long as you're tracking in the right direction that you want to travel, you can tell it it's going to be 24. And that's how we get numeric values for creating these iso circles on here. So, the only other thing I want to mention to you is this. It's a little confusing on here because now you're starting to see this again with this three-dimensionality to it. How do we find this thing right here? Well, you'll notice on here this has a part that's got a dimension of 21, and then 18, and then of course it all adds up, it's another 21 in the back, so it's the same. What I do is this. I actually start with the dead center of that iso circle like you created right there. And I can draw a line from its center right there, take whatever direction I want to go. Did you get scrunched? Okay. Let's unscrunch you, because you know what's going to happen. As soon as I unscrunch you, 3, 2, 1, Austin's is immediately going to scrunch. Because that's how it always works, right, Austin?
Yep.
Okay, tell me when it happened. So I'm following the ISO on here, which is why it's going off that direction. If I change it back here, so I go in this direction. If I simply type in 21, it'll tell me the next station. See right there? And I'll type in another 18. And I'll get the next station. And then I'll go back another 21, and I'll find the next station. So what I've done here is I created for myself a series of 3 different center lines that are the lengths I'm looking for. And that's what I'm looking for down here. So once I create this first iso circle on here, I may, if I want to, simply... You get scrunched?
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew that was going to happen, didn't we? We act surprised, but we know better, don't we?
No, Doug, we don't.
Yeah, we do. 3, 2, 1 in your back, okay? So I can actually create this first one out here, create that center line from it, and if I simply do a copy on here, I can copy this to the other station. So I'm taking it from here, and then I'm taking it to the endpoint there, I'm taking it to the endpoint there, I'm taking it to the endpoint there. So you see what I've done? I've actually just simply reproduced that thing 3 more times, giving it along those stations I'm looking for. Now what difference does that make to us? Well, what it makes for us is we see the cylindrical shape, and we actually get this guy back here we're looking for, and we can trim away what we don't need. Again, when you're trimming, make sure you save yourself the time and trouble to choose an edge. I can't even pick it down there, but to pick an edge for yourself, and then you can actually save yourself time rather than trim each bit where it crosses each one of those forms. So I'm going to get rid of this guy right here, and I'm going to leave these two guys, talk about them next. Now, down here you see this line that's going tangential between the two. We talked about going from quadrant to quadrant to get that, and that's what's going to give us this form. How do we create this little notch, this square notch that's being created off the bottom down here? Well, you use that same line we just talked about before. In this case, I'll start by drawing from that point right there. I'm going to go straight down a distance of 24, and that's going to take me down to high, to what would be that quadrant point. I'll change my ISO here and come out in this direction. Now, how far will that thing have to come out in this direction? Well, because it's tangent with the outside of that circle, I also know the distance from the bottom here to that point right there is also going to be another 24. There we see how I got that. So that's how I do it. I have to use that landmark on here to come down the radius, to come out the radius, and then I'll take this up until which point it hits that circle, and that's how I know it terminates. Does that make sense? So use that center line as a skeletal frame and build everything off of that. So when I'm done with it, I'll have these things gone, and you see where I trim things off when they meet each other, and I of course won't need to have any of that framework left behind on it. I'll do the exact same thing down here, or I can just simply say, okay, gee, this distance is 18, I'll come over 18, and then I'll copy this line and paste it over there. Now, will I see this curved line back there behind on the other side? No, you won't, because it's going to be buried behind this point back there, you won't see it. It'll actually be curving right there if I wanted to copy this guy over using the same base point. So I'm not going to see it, so I won't bother to do it. Now on here, you'll notice it's got this little notch cut out of it. It tells us that the notch depth is 8, and the notch width is 12. So all I did was just simply start right here, again, shifting my ISO plane. I started right here from the very top of that circle. I came down 8, and you can see it on there. There's 8. Then I went 6 in this direction, and that's how I get that line to lay out where it is. See that green line there and the green line there? I simply followed that center line down and then went out from that point. Then from there I can intersect with a circle, and then from there I can copy a line back in that direction, and I can copy this down to that location, again, using that same center point right there as a base point, copy that, and then simply move it back to there, and I'll see it falls in the exact position I'm looking for. So that's really the more complicated of the two problems on here. The other ones on here, get to this guy right here, on here I can just create this slot on here. Again, I can measure back, I can find the center point here. To find the center point up here, see this 50 over there? What I did was I came to the dead center here, I went up 50, and then I went back to the depth of the object, which was 65, and then I came back forward a distance of 20, and that gives me the location for the center of that, which I can copy back there to get that guy right there as well. See how it's kind of ghosted back there? And I can do the same thing with this right here, build it around that point, and then copy to get it back there. See how it's kind of ghosted back there as well too? And then I can simply do my quadrant, or point to quadrant, point to quadrant, point to quadrant, and then quadrant to quadrant across there. So this is what I'm looking for on there. And again, it's all fully within your means. Just maybe take a little time to set up more framework on this one than you did on the other ones, but use your logic. Same thing with this guy right here. Make sure that you're setting it all up. You see where the center points are. It's 30 in and 50 to the next. I can start here from wherever that distance is to 22. See it right there? Come back 22. From that position, go in 30, and then from there, go another 50. That gives me the center point I need for an ISO circle there, center point for an ISO circle there. And I know this depth over here is a value of 20 deep. I can simply go Z minus 20, and I can locate that whole thing by copying it, take it from its center point there, go down 20, and I see what I see back inside buried. So it's really not that complicated. In fact, I really don't need to spend any more time talking about it now unless you have any particular questions. So, you ready for me to shut up and let you attack it? Be honest with me, Emily. Just say, shut up, dog. Let me attack it. Okay. Then that's all I'll have to do then. So, work on this for all the class periods today. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be delighted to answer them for you. The rest of the directions do say that this will be on a B-size sheet. So put a B-size border on this thing right there. And it's called isometric pictorial. Incidentally, what side will I be using, inch or metric on this guy? The border. Metric, yeah. See the numbers? 12, 8, 60. You know it's going to be metric that way. So I give you all the clues that you need in the information that you've got. All right, plot it full scale, turn it into the basket like always, and then that's all you're going to be doing today. So when we gather on Thursday this week, it will be over assignment number 3, and then we'll continue on with what we have to do the rest of the week for the rest of the calendar. I think everybody's clear about that. These will not be due until next Tuesday then. All right, I will shut up and let you get to work. You've been a great audience. Now,